No, yeah.
Alright, so I need one person to step up to the plate who did the reading last night and ask a question about it. Right?
Okay, so when George tells Lenny to meet him, he tells him to meet him at the campsite, but then later he says to meet him in the brush in the river. So where does he?
Right here.
So what's the question? What's the
So
question?
where does he tell him to meet him overall when if he gets in trouble?
Where does he tell him to meet him? Are you calling something?
He tells them to meet at the same place they were camping at, or in the brush.
The brush is right there.
Before they go to the
There's my question.
Okay, so there's the answer. Everybody clear on that? And everybody agree with the answer?
Yeah.
Alright,
Alright.
think of something.
Like a question?
Yeah, question. If there's anything that confused you, or if you were completely clear on the chapter, go ahead and just ask something that you think, you know, kind of like a trivia almost about the chapter.
Why does George doesn't want Lenny to get near the curly?
So why does George not want Lenny to get near Curly? Good question. Collins.
Because they don't want him to get in like a fight, so they're just kind of like away from each other, and they don't, and Curly doesn't get Lenny mad, and so they don't fight basically.
Yeah, Lenny's kind of a difficult. You don't want him mingling too much because he'll give a lot away, you know, and he gets into trouble. He is mentally handicapped.
Come on, Eisley.
All right, Will, think of a question for us.
What brand of hat
Oh,
do
it's like.
the people wear? The really guy with like the bullwhip and stuff.
Okay, hands raised if you know the answer to what brand of hat it is.
No.
Anyone else? I think.
Isn't it Brennix?
No.
It's not.
Yep.
Stenson hat. All right, nice job. Do you have any questions? Now these are like good trivia ones, but is there anything that confused you in the chapter that you can ask about? Think about that if you're going to be answering a question coming up. We'll go back to you next. So, Mr. Stetson.
I don't really have a question.
Okay, you want to go back to. Does anybody have a comprehension question? Something they might have been confused about? Yes. Yes.
What was the deal with Curly's wife?
What was the deal with Curly's wife? Who can give me that situation? Collins.
She was purdy. She was a skate.
She was what?
A skate. No, that's what it described in the book. It said she was a skate.
That's the word they used?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what's a gentler term of
Can you
describing?
explain a very flirty girl who has a lot of males in her life?
Wait, guys, listen up, please. Okay, so who else can? Okay, that's a good explanation. Who else can kind of describe Curly's wife? And yeah.
Even though she's married, she's still interested in other men.
Right. So even though her husband is even on the property, she's surrounded by a lot of men at this place, and she kind of.
She goes around.
She's like,
She gets around, yes.
So what about her
a married woman
characteristics-wise? I mean, talk about age and maybe what she's like personality-wise, and yeah. I mean, is she mature? Is she intelligent?
She's not that old.
She doesn't really care about the man. She just like wants to.
She kind of seems like a young, for lack of a better term, like a floozy. Like she's not very smart. She just doesn't think before she acts, right? She's a blonde.
Oh, thanks.
Which explains that. Hey, I used to be a blonde too.
Really?
Well, when I was a work
He
kid.
is blonde.
Okay, who asked or who answered that? Oh, Grant, go ahead and ask another one. Unless somebody has a pressing one that they'd really like it. Yeah, go ahead.
Why does Curly play wrestling with his blood?
oh, to keep his hand nice and moist for her.
Raise your hand.
With Vaseline.
And Will.
Right here.
To keep his hand moist for her. Which could you explain why? Yeah. I don't get that.
So that he can like.
No, why? I want him to explain to me. Yeah, go ahead. We're ready.
No, you guys can.
Oh yeah, I don't
understand.
I don't even remember that part.
Yeah, like does it
And
really
it's
like love like
hand, soft.
What does that mean?
So that when he touches her, it's
You
not-
can ask
Oh
your
my
parents
God.
what that means. Yeah, hey guys, please keep it quiet. Yeah,
Okay. I forgot how Candy lost his hand.
okay, does anybody know how he lost
Wait,
his
someone
hand?
said eyes.
Or did you read ahead?
Wait, does it say?
No.
No, you.
Does it say?
No.
It's been a couple years.
Oops.
Okay, so we don't know how he lost his hand. Does anybody have another comprehension question? Yes.
Why did it call stable bug nigger? I don't get it. I really don't.
African
Oh,
American is
okay.
African American.
That's a good question. Okay, but what? It's a buck is the first word before the bad N word.
Stable bug?
Yeah, stable buck. Okay, so does anybody know what he does? Yeah.
Well, he's just like some guy that works in stabilizing. But like, I think the reason why they call him that word is isn't it because it's early 1900s. Even though slavery's not still around, obviously, then there's still a lot of oppression going on.
Yeah, and the buck thing, I think it has to do with he takes care of the horses, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I mean, by context, I didn't know either when I first read this book. I was like, what is it? A buck person. And he ends up dealing with horseshoes and stuff, so I think it's just somebody who tends to the animals. Yeah.
Audrey left her.
That's not funny.
Yeah.
Why did the Slim, I think, drown like 4 puppies or whatever?
Okay, who can answer that question? Why did Slim drown
Because he
puppy?
had
Yeah, Dave.
because he had too much and he couldn't his what he calls it his bitch because that's the female dog. That's what he calls female dog.
It is, that's what you.
Yeah, that's what you
female
call
dog is.
Yeah, no, so that's a good answer. So you think, you know, you're on this farm and there are 5 dogs in a litter. You can't take care of all of them. It costs money and time and
They
everything.
originally have 9.
Yeah, he had 9.
Oh, 9. Okay, and you know it's a drain financially and time wise. I know that. I remember my mom telling me a story. She grew up in Sweden, and her grandpa, one of their dogs had a litter of puppies, and they lived up in way northern Sweden, like no cars, rural area, and he didn't know what to do with some of them, and so he put them in a bag and put them in a river.
Oh.
I know, isn't that crazy?
That's what's old school.
Yes.
It's a question for all platinum. Okay. What direction did Lenny put
West.
his head
West.
when?
West.
What?
West.
Hear the rest of the question.
No, you guys shut
It's
up.
actually
Listen,
Chinese.
listen,
Dude.
listen.
Shut up.
Listen, let her finish the question.
Hiya.
It's part of the exercise.
Okay. It's A, up, B, down.
What's the question?
What direction did Lenny put his head when he was disappointed
What?
Down.
about?
Down.
Yes.
That's the right one.
Yes.
People generally put their heads down. Does anybody else have a comprehension question, something that they might have been confused about? Alright, what do you guys think of this way of like asking each other questions
That's
to
pretty.
try to figure out? Do you think it works?
Yeah.
How do you guys usually do it in this class?
A test. A test to make us feel stupid.
A test to make you feel stupid, but are the questions usually hard on the test?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Well, yeah, me because I don't read.
Read your slow.
Alright, raise your hand if you, and this isn't being reported back to Ms. Williams, but raise your hand if you do the reading every night as a sign. Or sometimes is it like you come in and go,
I'll just read like a page.
okay.
Well, do you mean by the whole chapter?
So maybe this way, this request method, instead of flunking a test because you don't do the reading, maybe this can help you ahead of time or something.
Yeah, I like this.
That's up to her. But thank you guys for doing this. Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh.